What's up, everybody? It's Coach Dave, and I lift.
And Laura and I lift, and welcome to the She Lifts.
He Lifts podcast. You've come across your podcast that talks all about sustainable fitness for real life. Thank you for joining us again this week. And this week we got a milestone to celebrate because Laura told me earlier today that we hit 100 listens. So we want to thank you. I want to thank you guys who tune into us each and every week, or at least who are tuning that when the topic strikes your fancy. And on that note, we're going to do something a little different today, and we're going to take questions from our listeners. We selected 3 questions out of the few dozen that we got. So our first question is going to be actually from Julia. Julia asked us, uh, if you were looking for a trainer, what would you look for and what questions would you ask before hiring the trainer? Laura, why don't you go
Yeah,
ahead and answer that one for us because I feel like you have a little bit more experience with this than I do.
I love this one because I am very focused on like becoming a good trainer because we've talked about this lots of times. When I was a little baby new trainer, I wasn't like an awful trainer, but looking back on it, I definitely did not know as much as I thought I did. So now I am super passionate about making sure that my training style aligns with my clients and making and help trying to help people find a trainer that aligns with them because the last thing that I would want is for somebody to discontinue their fitness journey because of a bad experience with any fitness professional. So we're going to try to weed that out. That being said, actually, one of my clients just said this to me. A trainer is kind of like a therapist. You got to kind of like if you have a bad trainer or if you have a bad therapist, that doesn't mean that you give up and you quit trying to find a trainer or you quit trying to get help, mental health help. That doesn't mean you quit. You keep going and you try to find the one that aligns with you. So when you're hiring a new trainer, I would ask them the top question I would ask is like, how long have you been a trainer? No hate to new trainers, but obviously with being a new trainer, you're not going to have as much experience as somebody who's been a trainer for a couple years. So you can still hire a new trainer. You just need to find out how many clients they have trained. They're not necessarily, like I said, a bad trainer. They might just focus a little bit too much on like what the science says, what the research says, and not enough on behaviors and how you're going to get your behaviors to change. So I would ask them, how do you go about nutrition with your clients? If they give you a meal plan, like a specific meal plan. You are going to eat these foods for breakfast. You are eating these foods for lunch. You are eating these foods for dinner. I personally think that's a red flag because that doesn't teach you anything. So as soon as you're off that meal plan, you learned zero on how to navigate your nutrition in your daily life. So when you follow a meal plan, it doesn't have people's birthdays on it. Like it doesn't account for celebrating holidays. So I personally think a meal plan is a red flag. Another thing I would ask them is how many clients have you trained? Within those clients that they have trained, I would find out how many align with your goals. So if your goal is weight loss, again, I'm going to use this as just a general, insert your goal to that. How many clients have you helped with weight loss? I don't think you necessarily need to find out like how many pounds your clients, like how many pounds have you helped people lose? I don't think that that's necessarily a thing because you never know what somebody's battling with. Like your weight loss journey might be a long-term journey. Somebody's weight loss journey might be a little bit longer than others. So I personally don't think you need to ask like how many pounds total they've helped people lose or inches or whatever. Some newer trainers may not be familiar with modifications. So like a fresh trainer, and I did this. So I don't want you to think that like I'm sitting here like, oh, I'm the best that like ever happened. I did this. This is why I'm speaking from it. I would give people exercises and be like, oh, I do that. So it's not that difficult for me. So I'm going to give Mrs. Jones that exercise. Turns out what is difficult for me is very different for what is difficult for somebody else. So when you have a new trainer, be wary of if they are ready with the modifications. So those would be the questions that I ask. Another thing I would be like, what's your training style? Do you Like if you want to get strong, I would go for a trainer that wants to get strong. If you like calisthenics, I would go for a trainer that likes calisthenics. I personally, like, I could give, if somebody asked me like, hey, I want to do a calisthenic workout today, I could give them calisthenics, but I can't get you to do. I have no concept of how we would utilize rings because I don't have rings, so I would not be the trainer for you if you want to work on calisthenics. Weight loss trainers, especially, depending on how long they have been a trainer, they may not be able to empathize with what it's like to be in a larger body. So for example, if you are in a larger body, you're gonna have a harder time like doing like a flat bench press. And as a newer trainer, you may think like, okay, or a newer trainer may think like, all right, we got the compound lift, squat, bench, deadlift. We're gonna have this client bench because that's a compound lift and that's like one of the foundational movements. But they don't know what it's like to be in a larger body. And not that you should be like, and getting up off of the bench is going to be hard. And not that you should be get embarrassed getting off a bench. Not that that is an embarrassing thing, but if you're already not super thrilled about having this new experience and you're already a little self-conscious, throwing something in there that kind of is not the best movement for your body type, that's not going to make you feel great, and it's going to put a negative like connotation on your fitness journey. You want to find somebody again that aligns with your goals. You would not want to hire a bodybuilding bikini coach if your goal is to lose weight, because those are vastly different things. Bikini coaches don't focus on changing habits. They are structure. You are hitting this amount of calories. You are hitting this amount of macros. End of story. I don't care how you get to it. This is what you're doing. Versus a weight loss coach is going to be a little bit more empathetic. They're going to focus on changing your behaviors instead of just telling you what to do. Because again, you want to be able to learn how to do this. Another big thing is if you are freshly postpartum, or if you're actually, honestly, any phase of postpartum, if you're relatively, if you gave birth, I would say like anywhere up to like 5 years postpartum, I would make sure that you are training with somebody that has familiar with, like, if you had a C-section, whether you got diastasis recti, honestly, even postpartum, just in general, your body is different than before you had your baby, whether you were active or not. So if you are even just like a little bit like, I think my body's a little different than when you had a baby, which you should be thinking that anyway, because it's completely different. I would hire a coach that has experience training postpartum clients, because one thing that I actually recently learned this, if you've had a C-section, you're not going to be able to lay flat on the floor and get off of the floor, like if like just sit up without using your hands. And I didn't know that because I'd never had a C-section. And we were doing some kind of workout the other day in like group training, and that was one of the exercises. And before I had to instruct other coaches on how to do that one, I was like, hey, just a heads up, if you've had a client that had a C-section, like this isn't going to work for them. Going back to that same experience, if you are laying, it's kind of like the laying flat on the bench thing. That may be something that you get self-conscious about because you don't know that that's a limiting movement for you. And I don't want you to be in a position where you're going to get self-conscious during your fitness journey. So there are a lot of things you should ask your trainer before you hire them. Honestly, I would say the number one thing is how long they've been a trainer, how many clients they've trained, their current case, their current client load, because you also don't want to get a trainer that's like wildly busy and has no time for you. And then how experienced they are with your goals would be the top four, but then there's some other little ones in there because I want to make sure you find a good trainer. And P.S., if you are interested, I'm going to plug us here. If you're interested in learning more information about training with Dave or I, make sure to click the link in our bio, whether you're go to our Instagram or our Facebook, click the link in our bio, and you can reach out to us and we can give you more information about training with each of us. There's a link for me and a link for Dave.
Well, thank you for that plug. Um, that's pretty cool. Um, but that being said, one of the things that struck a chord with what you just said is I was a lot like you when I was a new trainer. Especially me, because I've talked about my um rather extensive fitness journey, both physically and mentally. At least in bits and pieces, I've talked about it. But one of the things I when I went into it, after I decided that I was going to do this, it was like I sort of had it in the back of my mind. I've cracked the code. I know how to do this. I've lost 100 pounds. So I had sort of that, I don't know what the word, that cockiness about me.
Confidence.
Yeah, slightly overconfidence is really what it was. Not taking into account, yeah, I lost that weight, but I didn't have a whole, at the time, I really didn't have a whole lot of mobility problems, at least none that wouldn't be solved by losing weight. I also had a fairly extensive athletic background. And I also was not, um, like already knew like some basics about how to do a bench press, how to do a squat, how to do actually I'll deadlift I didn't. To be perfectly honest, I didn't learn how to bench press or deadlift until I was 35 years old. Um, but the other thing you have to, uh, when it comes to a new trainer specifically, I with brand new trainers, people who are within their first year, year and a half of training, and new trainers, by the way, if you're listening to this as well, work for a company. Don't go right into business for yourself. First of all, that is a very uh, uh, stressful thing to do right off the bat, especially if you're not in a financial position to do it. But go to work for a company because not only will that person have to be accountable to his clients, he's also going to have someone sort of holding him accountable or her accountable. They're going to have someone looking over their shoulder. They're going to have someone who is going to be critiquing their training style, their coaching style. And by the way, guys, when I say those things, those are two different things. Coaching is how you motivate. Training is how you get someone to work out. Um, but there's going to be critiquing their styles, and not even necessarily their styles, but just things that they say, words that they use. Um, and I was again, Lars talked about it how she has a uh, psychology minor. I A didn't graduate from college, and B, um, I don't have that. So a lot of times, and I'm a very direct person on top of that. So a lot of times when I'm talking to someone and they say something out of the, I'm a very, well, why not? What's stopping you? And I tend to be a little bit more in your face, and that isn't for everybody. Another thing that I am big on when it comes to, and I actually, this is another thing that Laura has taught me, and that this is one other thing I think I want to say while we're talking about the subject is Laura's been doing this for 4 years. I've been doing it for three, going on four. And we still learn not only from people that, resources and books and podcasts and mentors that we have, but we learn from each other. And the 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 end all be all of I think of someone's ability to coach is their ability to continue to learn. And that is
Yeah.
something that you should look for is if you look through their website or their social media or whatever it is they're using to advertise themselves, go back and look at the beginning to versus where now and see how they've grown. And as a matter of fact, one thing that Laura taught me is recently, I can give her another little shout out here, a little pat on the back, is my social media. My social media is if you look at my social media, my training style versus what I show myself working out are kind of two different things. Like, I just posted a video of me doing a 300-pound deadlift. Most of my clients that come to me, A, aren't in a position to be able to do that, and B, their goal isn't aligned with me doing a 300-pound deadlift. Um, Laura also had to critique my form a little bit on that one. Um,
I love deadlifts. They're my
yeah,
favorite.
yes, I know. I am much more of a bench press person, I will admit.
Oh,
Um,
I'm a compound lift girl. All the compound
yeah,
lifts.
absolutely. So our next question comes from Ginger. Ginger is actually, I want to give her a shout out too while I'm doing this because I told her I would on this episode. Ginger is actually one of my clients. Who actually she joined us because she listened to Laura and myself talk about the way we coach, and it struck a chord with her. So she's been training with me for about 3 weeks now. She is down just a little over 10 pounds. Um, so I want to give her a shout out. But she asked,
Yeah.
episode 6, you talked about the grind. Can you elaborate on the grind and ways to navigate and or deal with the grind? So the grind. What is the grind? The grind is what some guys we should all be familiar with. It is our life. It is our crazy schedules. it is this crazy modern world that we all live in where we have jobs that we think we're on call 24/7. We have kids, we have spouses, significant others. We have things that other responsibilities. Some of us have other folks in our life, whether it's parents or aunts, uncles, or in-laws that we have to take care of. One of the things that I think, um, as I've explored my own mental health in the last 4 years or so, for many years I thought that we, I'm trying to think the right way to say what I'm going to say. What we think of taking time for ourselves as something that is selfish. Taking care of ourselves is not selfish. And the grind is all of those outside influences, at least my definition of the grind, and the way I used it in the context that I spoke about it in this episode, is all of the things that distract us from taking care of ourselves. Now, not doing everything we want, not getting everything we want, not doing that at the expense of others, but taking care of ourselves. The grind is those distractions. At some point, you need to put your foot down and advocate for yourself. That is the best way I can describe it. Laura and I talked about it when we were planning this episode, and I said it. It is no dispersion on her, it is no dispersion on me, and it is no dispersion on 90% of us who have jobs that are not life and death. Now, if you are a doctor, if you are law enforcement, if you are a trauma nurse, if you are some type of first responder and your job is life and death, first of all, thank you, because you keep the world running. Secondly, that is not what I'm talking about. That is a different issue. But I'm talking about the writers who work in some sort of a sales industry or some sort of a banking industry or some sort of a customer service industry that at some point during our evening hours with our family, we're still getting calls from our boss and we're still getting calls from the office and from customers. At some point, guys, you have to learn to turn that stuff off and say, nope, this is my I've said, I know Laura and I have had different little bit philosophies on this one, but I'm just going to use mine. This is my 1 hour 3 times a week that I'm doing to take care of myself. This is my hour to meal prep. This is my time to drink my water. This is my time to walk away from my desk for 30 seconds to go toss some water in my blender bottle and drink my protein shake. Those are the things that at some point you have to just put your foot down and say, this is my time. There's also, as far as the last part of that question, ways to navigate and or deal with it. Besides putting your foot down, set yourself up so you are not spending so much time and forgetting to take care of yourself, or it gets to the point where I can't, it's too overwhelming to do both. Meal prep, uh, protein that I just talked about. Put a scoop in your blender bottle before you go to work. If you have to, they sell them. They sell little cones with screws on both ends that are like little funnels that you can put in your bag or in your briefcase or in your purse. And if you're having a second shake throughout the day, you can put it in there and then put it in the same bottle that you used earlier. Meal prep your breakfast. Pack your stuff up the night before. Take that extra half an hour to get yourself ready for the next day, the the next day, the night before, or the morning before you go to sleep, whatever your schedule dictates. I said it the last episode, I want to say it one more time. The best thing you can do for the people that you love is take care of yourself because the people that depend on you, whether it's your children, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your significant other, they depend on you for something. And if you aren't healthy, if you aren't able to get up out of bed, if you aren't able to walk up the stairs, if you aren't able to walk around the house without losing your breath or because your knees hurt because you're so overweight, that is a problem and that is going to directly impact them. So take care of yourself.
For me, when I think of like the grind and like the way in that episode, I was talking about like these Instagram like reel sounds that come up and it's like, oh, like grind and silence, like whatever. I think like the grind for me is like we have a kind of the way, and I don't necessarily know if it's like our culture now, but like if you get a hobby, we're now pushed like, how can I make money off of this hobby? Like, how can I make money off of this? Like, it's always like money, 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 money. And I know we hear this like, yes, you need money to spend things, and we hear it all the time. Money doesn't buy happiness, but we are so focused on like, well, if I make more money, maybe I'll be good. And like, there's a difference between being able to be like financially stable and like making more money. And I think sometimes we get caught up in like trying to monetize everything, where we're like taking a step back, like, is this what I even want to do? Like, do I like, because I'm super into house plants. Like, my whole office is like filled with plants. And our like grind culture would say like, oh, you need to like make money off of your plants. Like, no, I just want to sit back. I want to look at my plants, and I just want to like be vibing with my plants. I don't need to make money off of every single hobby that I have. Like, I just want to enjoy them. And it's okay to like take a step back and just enjoy things without worrying about how am I going to monetize this. Or I think if you think about like, what are my goals with my life, with my fitness, with my relationships, whatever it is, if it's not helping you get closer to those goals, then I personally would consider that like part of the grind, or like something that you may not necessarily need to be doing. Because fitness will help you with your job, but focusing on your job, staying late at work, taking that meeting when you're supposed to be off, and not to say that like I'm perfect, because I definitely do that sometimes. Like, my clients will text me and I'll be in the middle of doing something, I'll text them back. Um, so try to set boundaries. Sometimes we'll say, if you have kids, especially the default parent, whoever the default parent is, and this will go through phases. Sometimes it's mom, sometimes it's dad. um your kid has a tendency to want one parent more than the other, and then the other parent more than the other at different phases of life. So that your family like kind of knows what you're doing, like, have a set aside time of like, this is when I'm working out. And if your spouse or your partner isn't down to like work out with you, they at least know like, okay, I'm gonna have to like entertain the kid while this is happening. Or they're gonna do it with you. And then as you go, like, your kid will kind of get the hang of the routine. Like, okay, well, on these days, I'm like, mom and dad do their workout, which is what we did with our son. Like, at the beginning, he definitely was not thrilled about it. But now he knows the routine. Like, okay, I'm gonna play, they're gonna do the workout, and we're setting aside that time to get closer to our goals. But we're also, because my husband and I met at the gym, so that's like our time to kind of like do why we even met and have a family in the first place. So we want to make sure that we're spending time doing that for us, which is getting us closer to like our emotional goals that we have in our marriage. So just making sure every time you look at something, like, how is this going to get me closer to where I see myself with my life? And if that thing doesn't fit in there, it may be part of the grind. That being said, it is a little different. Like, you obviously have to make ends meet. Like, I have two clients. They're both single women. They live by themselves, so they don't have roommates or anything to help contribute to the bills. They go to work, they go right to their second job, and they work at their second job till like 9, 10 o'clock at night. We're working on it. We're trying to get their sleep routine down a little bit so that we're not compromising sleep. But they also have fitness goals. So like, you can't push it. So like, they're probably very stressed out. So I don't want them working out 5, 6 days a week. I want them working out 2, maybe 3 days a week to complement their fitness goals and not add to the grind. So your grind is going to look a little different, and how you adjust your life to the grind is going to be different for everybody. So as you're hearing all this information, it's okay if something doesn't align. Like, if I gave a tip and you didn't like it, and you like what Dave said better, take Dave's tip, because this is your journey and you need to do what works best for you.
It's funny that you said that about the monetizing everything thing. There's something, and I've said this before, about at some when people try to make one of the things, and it's sort of a catch 22, is doing what you if you could find a way to do what you love for a living, it doesn't feel like work, but it's always going to be work. And I sort of put this one to, this is the example that I always use when I say this. If you're a chef and you enjoy cooking, I enjoy cooking. I actually very much enjoy cooking on the grill or cooking on the stove or making spaghetti sauce from scratch or things that I can do. I don't think I'd want to do that for a living. And to be honest with you, when I decided to do this for a living, I'm like, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to make something that makes me that I use as a stress relief into something that is also going to be a stress? And that was right.
That is
Because
so
let's
real.
face it, I love what I do. I love, but there are days where, I will come home from work and I'm like, oh my God. But but when it comes to monetizing, you have to Laura with her plants. If that is what brings you peace, you don't have to turn that into a career. So that's just my little
Yeah.
spiel.
Like I used to work in an office and people knew that it worked out and they would be like, well, why don't you train people? Like, why don't you write people programs? And I'd be like, I don't want to. Like, this is my me time. I don't want to spend time like turning my hobby into my job. And that was a different phase of life for me. Now, like, I love what I do. Like, I genuinely am a career trainer. I don't see myself doing anything else. But at the time, I was like, no, like people would be like, write me workouts. And I'd be like, no, I don't want to. This is my thing. I'm not extending it into a business because I just don't want to. And it's okay too. In different phases of life, your grind is going to look different. Your hobbies are going to look different. And it doesn't always have to be set in stone. Like, I don't want to write workout plans for a living. Here I am. That was probably, I don't know, like 6 years ago. Here I am 6 years ago, 6 years later. Wouldn't change
Right?
anything.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. All right, so our last question, and I'm going to take this one because it was something that I actually said that they asked if you don't mind.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm going to warn everybody this is going to be a little bit of a detailed answer as well, much like Laura with her trainer tips. But I'm going to talk about this. So, uh, in a reel that Laura posted on the He Lifts She Lifts uh Instagram page, she talked about she it was a clip of me saying one of the things that new clients I don't have what I said verbatim, but
I'll
if
clip
there's
it.
one
I'll
thing,
edit it in.
this is one question I know that they are setting themselves up for failure when they ask me is, and Laura, correct me if I'm wrong, how many calories do I need to eat? The mentality is as long as I'm within my calories, I'm going to lose weight or I'm going to gain weight or whatever my goal is. The problem is not all calories are created equal. And what I'm going to say to this is, first of all, context comes important. I said new clients. So when clients come to me and say, how many calories should I eat? So generally, when I say that, I'm talking about new clients because in my experience, when people say, how many calories should I be eating? They're looking for a way to take the foods that they love, that they know don't get them closer to their goals, take the calories there, fit them in, and then fit the things that are going to get closer to their goals around them. Laura has a good strategy when she talks about adding things in, not taking things out. And this is where I think sometimes people, at least in the beginning, they need to understand that there are certain things that they're going to have to give up. The specific example I used, and just to let you guys know, this was a little inside joke between Laura and I, was Swedish fish. So the exact quote in the question that was asked is when I said about clients asking me how many calories. I do this. I take the mentality. I take that exact mentality as long as I'm within my calories and I emphasize my protein a little bit more. I'd be interested to know why this is a problem. Is there something else I could be doing? All right. So why is this a problem and why, especially for new clients? All right. So let's break this down. So to do some research for this, I Googled Swedish fish and I took what would be about uh it was a found it on DoorDash on the DoorDash website. And I looked at the nutrition facts. This was roughly a $3 bag. So this is the kind of bag that you would buy like at a convenience store as you're checking out. This is not the giant movie theater box, and this is not the grocery store bag that's going to last you for 2 weeks. This is a bag that most people, I'm going to say, by the way, are going to eat in one sitting. But so a bag of Swedish fish has one serving of Swedish fish. Excuse me, not a bag. Has 110 calories. One serving is 30 grams, which is roughly 5 pieces. In that bag, there were 5 servings. So that's five pieces of Swedish fish. Has zero fat, 27 grams of carbohydrates, 27 grams of, I'm sorry, 23 grams of sugar, and 0 grams of protein. Not only that, the sugar that is in this, it's not like you're getting sugar from an orange or an apple or a peach. No, this is high fructose corn syrup. This is extremely processed, simple sugar. This is the kind of sugar that will spike your insulin, causing you to store fat, and we're going to get back to that in just a minute. Conversely, 30 grams, which is roughly 1 ounce of chicken breast. And I'm going to use chicken breast because I'm using an extreme example on one side. I'm going to use extreme example on the other side. But bear with me. Contains 1 gram of fat, 0 grams of carbohydrates, and 6.5 grams of protein. So based on that, if you look at just those, and that is again 1 gram of each. So we're talking about a similar weights. Obviously, the chicken breast is going to be the more nutritious, the more satiating, and the smarter choice, especially if your goal is weight loss. If your goal is weight gain, we're going to talk. We can talk a slightly different conversation, but still, here's another thing. Talk about the volume of food we eat. If you look at an ounce of chicken breast versus an ounce of Swedish fish, that's 5 pieces of Swedish fish. If you can visualize what 5 pieces of Swedish fish looks like, it's not a lot. And then 1 ounce of chicken breast isn't a lot either, but I can tell you visually it is more than 1 ounce of Swedish fish. So we're not going to eat an ounce of chicken breast. We're also not, most of us aren't going to just eat 5 pieces of Swedish fish. I'm going to give us all the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to say we're going to eat roughly 2.5 servings. So let's say 12, 13 pieces of Swedish fish. Okay. So if you multiply all that by 2.5, still zero fat, still zero protein, and 67 grams of sugar. So you are basically putting 67 grams of sugar in your body of processed sugar, high fructose corn syrup. When you say it like that, it's a lot. But again, no, there are 10 pieces of Swedish fish doesn't seem like a lot. Conversely, on that same amount of chicken breast, 3 grams of fat, 0 grams of carbohydrates, and now 19.5 grams of protein. And what was the calories? 109. I lost my calories where I wrote it down. More calories. You're gonna have to multiply
Really,
30 times 2.5. Oh, I'm sorry.
really like
63 calories. So you're definitely getting more nutrition out of the the chicken breast. Again, you're not going to eat plain chicken breast, so I'm gonna further break this down. I googled the salad recipe with macros and 2 slices of 647 bread. If anyone's not familiar with that, it's made by Schmidt's Bakery. It is what is marketed as low carb bread, has I think 4 or 5 net carbs per slice and only 40 calories per slice. So the chicken salad recipe that I Googled, 3 ounces of that chicken salad, by the way, I didn't realize there was going to be this much math involved in all of this, contained 15 grams of fat, 1 gram of 1 gram of carbohydrates, and 14 grams of protein in just a chicken salad. That was 195 calories. You add in 2 slices of 647 bread, which you could put some toast on, maybe some lettuce, maybe some tomato, which have very minimal calories. Now you're at 275 calories with 275 calories, which is the same amount of calories in 2.5 servings of Swedish fish, and it is a larger volume of food. So now not only have you had the same amount of calories in a larger volume, which is going to fill you up more, you've also had more nutrition in that larger amount of food. When it comes to weight loss, yes, calories are important, but you also have to remember at some point volume of food has to come into play too. If you put things that aren't as nutritious, which tend to be very calorie laden in small amounts into your body, your stomach is, you don't have that full and satiated feeling. When you start adding more nutritious food, which tends to be less calorie dense in larger amounts, now you're filling yourself up with nutritious food and getting closer to your goals. Again, even the fat in that was mostly unsaturated fats, which are your healthy fats like in avocados and nuts. The other thing is, I didn't, because I was already, this, to go through all this took me long enough. I could have probably doctored that recipe up, and I've talked about how I do this all the time. If I changed the mayonnaise content from, that was probably most likely regular mayonnaise, and used olive oil mayonnaise, which has 60 calories versus 140, I think, in 2 tablespoons of mayonnaise versus um 60 calories in olive oil mayonnaise, or light mayonnaise, which has 35 calories per serving, that would further reduce that. Now I can add something else in there that's got a few more calories, like, I don't know, an apple, a piece of fruit. Um, I don't know. I could think of a couple of the things that I would add in there. I'm not going to necessarily recommend all of them, but there are other things that you could add in there. Now, the last part of this question, the the last part of this question, and I'm going to come back to it, was the what I said about the beginner. If you are in a more maintenance phase, if you have lost your 30, 40 pounds, and you're just trying to hold tight and maintain that physique, the weight and or physique, and maybe say, yeah, there's always, other than there's always room for improvement, and I'd like to have a little bit flatter stomach, or a little bit more definition, or a little bit want to lose another 5 pounds. That's a different story versus the person that is still at the very beginning of stages of their fitness journey. When it comes to food, when it comes to all of this, and again, we will mention this probably at least once, if not more, on every episode. Laura said it last week, a couple weeks ago. She said, "I don't think I've mentioned this." Yeah, we mention it all the time. We are not here necessarily to become bodybuilders. We're not here to become, like she said with the bikini coach. We're not here to become athletes. We're not necessarily here. We talk about sustainable fitness for real life. Sustainable fitness for real life meaning, what can you do today that you can do next week, that you can do next month, next year, 10 years from now, and still be staying on your goals on track. And guys, yes, we are going to have Swedish fish or gummy bears, or what was the thing you talked about, Laura? Was Reese's a big thing for you? That you love Reese's?
Fries,
Fries. Okay. Oh, that's right. Cheese fries.
cheese
Um,
fries.
cheese fries. Pepperoni pizza for me. Yes, I'm never not, it's not like I'm never going to have that. I had one Sunday. But guess what? Monday morning, I got back on my shit. Beginners, at some point, you have to learn how to prioritize food. And when we start putting how many calories I can eat over, over what's going to satiate me and what's going to benefit me in the long term, that's why I have a problem with people asking me that again, right off the bat. Someone who long, comes to me and says, "Hey, I've been working out and I keep my weight keep fluctuating. What can I do? How many calories should I be eating?" That's a different story. That person has maybe already lost their weight. They're just trying to maintain and not having to go on that yo-yo. That I understand. The bikini coach, going back to her, she is going to give you, or he is going to give you a specific meal plan. Or she is going to give you a specific amount of calories and macros that you have to hit. That's because you have a very specific goal. Laura and I talk about most of the time general fitness. Again, our tagline, sustainable fitness for real life. What can we sustain for the rest of our lives? And that's why I have that problem with that question right off the bat.
I'm going to come in with the behavioral aspect of why I have a problem with this. So Dave is a little more about the facts. I'm a little bit more about the behaviors. I was taking notes. I'm in full transparency. I did not have any notes prepped for this question, so I was doing that while Dave was talking. So that's what I was doing. If you were watching me type, I
I
promise
was
I was
wondering
listening.
what you were writing there.
Yeah, no, I was taking my notes. I literally have nutrition question on my whiteboard, and that's it. So, behavioral aspect of why I don't like my clients tracking calories. So again, we're going back to the beginner because that was the context. I personally do not want my brand new clients to worry about tracking calories because one, most of the time when I have a client, I want them eating more. I want them eating more protein. Sometimes I want my clients to eat more calories off the bat because if I get a client that has been trying to diet for a long time and has been trying to lose weight and lose weight and lose weight, if I get somebody that's at 1,200 calories and they're having a hard time losing weight, the last thing I am worried about is cutting their calories. I'm going to increase their calories because I want their body to be fueled to build muscle. As we're building muscle, we are burning off body fat. So sometimes there's something called a reverse diet, which we could do a whole thing on a reverse diet. You're going to increase your calories. As you're increasing your calories, your body's building muscle, speeding up your metabolism. Even though you're increasing your calories, you're still losing body fat. So I may tell you we're going to increase your calories. And I don't want you to necessarily track your calories because you may be way too obsessed with how many calories you're eating. It might start to get you mentally stressed out a little bit. And I talked about this on an episode in the past. When I was a brand new trainer, I had a client and she could not get into meal prepping because it would affect her mental health. So I was okay with her eating lean cuisines. Is that super nutritious? No. But tracking calories for her and being mindful of her nutrition affected her mental health. So what I'm going to say is add in more protein. Make sure you're drinking your water. I don't really care where your calories are at because I know if you're hitting your protein goal, you're probably around there anyway. On top of tracking calories, on the days, if you've ever tracked calories, you have probably done this. If you go to something where you know, like, okay, I'm going to be eating like off my meal plan, I'm going to be eating things that I know I shouldn't be eating. You're not going to track. You're not going to be sitting there with your phone like MyFitnessPal, 6 slices of pizza, cheese fries, and I'm using that as some things that I eat. Like when my husband and I get pizza, I will tear up some pizza. So I'm not calling anybody out because I will eat that. Cheese fries, soda. You're not gonna put that in MyFitnessPal because you're gonna see that and it's gonna be like 3,000 calories, 200 grams of fat. I'm completely making these numbers up, by the way, so don't take this as this is what the macros for this are. I don't know, very low protein and a bunch of sodium. So you're gonna know, like, okay, I'm not gonna track that day. But if I'm telling you, be mindful of your protein, and you have options, and some of them include protein and some of them don't, you're gonna pick the ones that include protein, whether it's like good for you or not. You're going to be more mindful of choosing those foods that have protein in them because all I told you was eat more protein. I didn't tell you eat 1,500 calories. So behaviorally, you're going to actually stick to it more if I give you a very simple goal. Focus on protein. You're going to know that's meat that has protein in it. That's what I'm going to eat. So behaviorally, that's why I like to have my clients just focus on protein. Another thing is if you're only focusing on calories, it's not a very nice term, so I'm going to tell you what it is because you're probably going to know what I'm talking about, but I'm just saying I do not condone prefacing, I do not condone calling anybody this or not shaming anybody. But if you've ever heard the term skinny fat, so it's like somebody who's small, but they have a little bit of a belly, you're going to get skinny fat if all you care about is calories because, again, you're not focusing on that protein to build muscle. So you're, cutting your calories, you're losing weight, but you're not adding in any muscle definition. You're not changing the shape of your muscle bellies. So you're losing body fat, but you don't have anything to replace it with, which is why you end up skinny fat. And I personally have never had a client that has been their physique goals. So we want to hit our goals. Not only that, we are going to feel better when we are fueling our body with nutritious foods. We're gonna feel a lot better when we're focusing on something that has more protein than when we're eating Swedish fish. And as I've talked about plenty of times, you want to focus on how you feel because once you acknowledge those changes and how you're feeling, you are going to continue on your journey. Another thing, so fun fact, nutrition labels are allowed a 20% room for error. So you could be counting calories and you're like, okay, cool, this has 200 calories. it might not actually have 200 calories, which is the terrible thing about tracking, is that you really don't actually know if your food has 200 calories in it. Protein, same thing. They do have room for error on the protein, but if we're only focusing on calories, we could be off by hundreds of calories at the end of the day. Where protein, we're still fueling our body, we're still focusing on building muscle, so it's less of a loss that way. Personally, I think, as we're focusing on protein. So when you're tracking, you may not be actually tracking what you think you are. So that is my thoughts on the behavioral aspect on why we need to focus, or why we shouldn't be focusing on calories.
And I agree with you. And the other thing that I'm going to talk about is, and I forgot to mention this in my other little rant, if you look at something that's 100 calories, it could be on the label, it could be 80 calories in real life, it could be 120. So again, 40 calorie swing there. The other thing is the way we track that, even if we're adding those labels up or we're using our fitness tracker doesn't know exactly every movement that we make. I've seen people wave their fitness trackers around to run their steps up. I've actually been moving my hands around talking to people, and because I'm very animated a lot of times when I talk, if you've ever really paid attention to the video on this, that can actually make my steps go up. And I've actually, when I used to wear my Apple Watch all the time, I actually hit my step goal as I was sitting at a desk talking to a customer when I used to sell cars. So again, there are plenty of ways to get our nutrition in without necessarily counting the calories. And again, putting it in context of the way I answered that question, or the statement that I made, putting it in context, it's a beginner thing, not necessarily something as we go along further. So that's all we have for this week, ladies and gentlemen. Join us next week. We are going to go 5-on-5. That's right, Coach Laura versus Coach Dave, as we are going to talk about each come up with 5 things that 5 mistakes that people make when it comes to nutrition. So, Laura, tell them what they can do.
You can do hard things.
That's right. So until next week, ladies and gentlemen, woo! Thank you for listening to the She Lifts, He Lifts podcast, Sustainable Fitness for Real Life, with Laura Ash and Coach Dave Webster.
As always, we thank you for your support, and if you enjoyed this episode, please share the love by sending it to your friends and family, and by leaving us a 5-star rating.
You can follow Laura on Instagram and TikTok at LauraAsh_CPT or Laura Ash Personal Trainer on Facebook. Follow Coach Dave at Rockstar Fitness on Facebook, at DWebster023 on Instagram.
Follow us on Instagram at SheLifts_He Lifts and She Lifts He Lifts podcast on Facebook and YouTube. Until next time, this is She Lifts, He Lifts.